So in this pose, you want to do all of the same alignments that you do for all of the seated poses, which is going to be making sure that the pelvis is upright and rotating the thighs. So you can individually roll each thigh, actually up, because we want the knee and the toe to stay upright. So a common misalignment in this pose is the knees and toes rolling forward when you fold forward. So we want the knees and toes to stay upright and flexing the feet. And side body long, extend your arms over your head. And you can fold forward, hinging at the waist. And when you start to feel the curve come into your back, you can lower your hands. And you can see once she lowered her elbows, she then again rotated her legs to be facing upright, because when we start to rotate the pelvis, when we start to fold forward in the pose, we start to turn the knees and toes forward, but we want to be stretching the inner lines of the legs, the adductor muscles, and so it's important to keep the knees and the toes facing upright. And this is a pose, in my opinion, that is best to stay in for a while, because the adductors are typically a very tight muscle, and so you can kind of do a lot of work in the pose, spending a little bit of time. So an adjustment that you can do in the posture is to take your hands and place them on the thighs, helping to ground them down, and then you can take your knees and start to help them to fold forward. Does that feel okay? So her knees and toes are staying upright because my hands are helping with the external rotation, and my knees are helping to elongate the spine. And there's lots of modifications of this pose. If she had really tight legs, hamstrings, adductors, she could stay upright with the hands behind. So this is also a good way of staying grounded in the sit bones and working the extension of the legs without putting too much strain on the backs of the legs and the adductors. And it can also be done. It also can be done with blocks to support if you started to fold forward and had a big curve in your back. And fold like this. You can use blocks. Sorry, I don't have them yet. So if she's starting to fold forward, you can have them come back upright and place, instead of trying to get your elbows on the mat, you can extend your elbows onto the blocks. And this is a really good yin posture, like Sam was saying in lecture today, to stay in for a while. And you can make any sort of, are you guys familiar with yin? So in a yin pose, you could start off using a lot of support, resting your head on there. And then maybe spending 5 minutes here and eventually making your way down. When you start to feel your body relax, you can change the heights of the blocks and then eventually move them out of the way. But it's a really beautiful posture for working what we were talking about yesterday, kind of lengthening the adductor muscles to keep the hips kind of juiced up in all directions.
And you want the toes flexed the whole time?
Yeah, kind of the Barbie toes. So the pointing of the feet and flexing of the toes. It's a good way to stay in the pose. And why to keep the legs flexed in the pose? Because the flexing of the thigh muscle is going to help lengthen the hamstring. So when we're in the pose loose and relaxed, we're not really doing much for the body except hanging out in the hips. And when you engage the legs, you can help to lengthen the backs of the legs, backs of the hamstrings. Thank you. Yeah.
Do you want to do to be just generally engaged, or do you want to be actively rotating outward?
A little bit of both. You want the most important are the knees and toes facing upright. So the most common misalignments in the pose are the knees rolling in and the curve in the back. So you see a lot of people in the pose like this. But when you firm up the legs, it kind of just brings awareness all around this area because we don't want to be, sometimes some people experience pinching in this area too, in the hip socket. And so having it firm maybe takes them out of the pose a little bit, but can be more safely into the pose.
If you have hips that sort of roll backwards, would you ever sit on a block to help?
Yeah, you could. It's just the same issue as in all of the postures where we elevate the hips, is then you want to micro bend the knees so that there's no hyperextension of the knees. But yeah, if you see people who start to roll, like when they're up in the pose, they have it, and then they start to lean forward and they do this, you can have them, so we do want outer rotation here, but you can also pull the flesh back and maybe stay upright in the pose, or any way that there isn't the starting to round or the hips rolling back. So that might mean just staying upright. But for a lot of people, guys more specifically, or generally I guess, guys tend to have a lot of tightness in this posture. And a lot of men in my classes stay in the pose like this, or they're not folding quite as deeply. And our hips, women's hips, are of a different shape than men's, and so for us it's a little bit easier. And this is very generally speaking. A lot of people have problems folding forward in this pose anyway, but that can be a way to kind of solve the curve to the rolling back, is to stay upright or pull the flesh back. Yeah.
What can you do to accommodate painful knees, like on the inside of the knee?
Yeah, so you can be in the pose with, you don't have to be, so I typically tell people if we're coming in and out of the pose several times to go maybe your 70% first time. So if that means coming here the first time and checking out how it feels and you're feeling pulling here, maybe softening into the knees a little bit or using rolled up blankets under the knees will help lift the knees a little bit. Do you experience it when the legs are straight?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you can take the pose like this.
Okay.
But keeping the legs flexed or engaged, or even putting something underneath both legs, those low blocks that we have would be nice right under the knees just to support it a little bit. And you can still work on, because what we're working on is stretching this, so you can still work on outer rotation with the knees slightly bent. It's totally fine. And we didn't go through this, but instead of folding forward, I like to keep my knees and toes aligned. I like to walk my hands down my legs to keep the rotation, to keep the alignment of the legs. So instead of walking forward, as I feel more flexible in the pose, I walk down, which is the B variation of the pose. I think Titania is doing it in the book. So the A variation is folding forward, and the B is grabbing the toes. And if you can't quite get there, you can hold on to the legs at any point. But just like in the yamas that you guys were talking about today, Astaya is like a really good one to apply here. Like you don't have to be in the pose 100%, especially if you're feeling pulling on the kneecap or pain in the low back when you fold forward, or pinching in the hips. There's modifications to make this pose comfortable for everyone. Is there anyone who experiences pain in this pose? Everyone. And you experience it where?
Well, I'm wondering, because I like over flexibility in the hips. This pose is really difficult to, like, because my body just wants to go to the ground. But should I be engaging in the core and the thighs and trying to and prop up with the block maybe? And
could be.
And work on engaging the muscles?
Yeah. Okay. So in this pose for you could probably apply a little bit of bandhas. So for you, it's really easy to be in the pose and lay your belly on the mat, I imagine, right? Like you can lay all the way flat. But if you pull in your pelvic floor, that's pulling in the femur bones into the socket a little more. You can keep your navel engaged a little bit to have a little bit more control, as opposed to feeling very floppy in the pose, which, yeah. like the stretch feels good, but you feel like you're going too far. And so for you, maybe a little bit of resistance in the hands too. So some people like to go deeper, you want to maybe walk your hands further, but if you feel like you're going too deep for yourself, use your hands. You can still open your chest at any point with your hands pushing into the mat, kind of like cow pose here. Not arching the back, but using your hands to support the pose as opposed to going as deeply as you can. It's not always necessary to go as deeply as you possibly can. That's Sian was talking about today in the lecture. And where do you experience pain in the pose?
Here on the chest.
Yeah. So this is a really good pose for you to do. Or it's pain, or you feel like intense stretch. Yeah. So you said you run, right?
Yeah.
So what I've experienced with the limited running that I do, and you guys have seen it running up this hill to the house, is that while I think that yoga is really amazing for the whole body, there's not a lot of pulling in yoga, right? Like, so we're not pulling ourselves forward all that often. We're not using the adductors all that much to engage. And running, you do. So when I run, it's like I'm so strong because of yoga, and then I run, and my adductors are killing me. My inner thighs hurt so bad because I'm not using those muscles so much in yoga. So yoga, this posture specifically, Konasana, the next one, is going to help you in the pose. And if it feels like an intense stretch, you can stay with it. And if it starts to feel grippy, then that's your edge. Like finding that edge to be in the pose, but. If you are a runner, then this is an amazing stretch because, while I don't like running all that much, I found that running is helpful for the muscles that I don't quite get to in my yoga practice. Does anyone else have pain in this pose? Say you do?
I just feel like
Yeah. 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 What did you say?
I feel like really tight right here on the leg.
Yeah. So for those of you who feel tight, there can be micro flexion in the knees, or you can take the modification and see if that helps, because I can still go just as far down as I could without the blocks. But there's still some awareness, like I can't press my leg all the way down because I can probably hyperextend my knee in the pose too. So this will help shorten, as instead of feeling too much stretch behind the knee for you and for you as well. You could probably use it. If you have the body consciousness, you don't necessarily need to. If you feel like it's hard to hold the slight knee bend, you can prop yourself up. We don't have so much here, but I think blankets are really just as amazing of a prop as blocks are, because you can unfold a blanket. Like maybe you don't need so much support in a pose, but just having a little bit of roll under your knees is really helpful in a lot of poses, like Virasana, the poses we were doing yesterday. To support behind the knee with a blanket is really good for the knee. So yeah. Yeah. Like in your sit bones, you feel pain.
Like when you have like this, it's like it feels like it's stretching and it's also
Too much. Yeah. So you could probably rotate your pelvis forward a little bit while keeping the outer rotation of the legs to be more forward of the sit bones. Is that better, or is it still?
it's like it's like right in here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that could be,
It's like the bone. Look at it.
it's the bone,
Yeah.
maybe from sitting all day. This is also like where the psoas, the iliopsoas connects, like right there too. So as we've done like 1,000 low lunges and high lunges in the practice, that muscle can be kind of like overworked. So but that's like a new pain.
Yeah.
As
So
a-
they usually have that.
Yeah. It might be sitting on our beds all day, but it could be the psoas too, because it connects down here, and as we've done like a ton of, we stretch that muscle a lot in these practices and all that warrior ones and stuff. It could be. you can take the pose like less extreme. So instead of, so I mean in Upavista Konasana.